everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimale here in Abuja. Let's tell you quickly that President Bola Tinubu has today departed Abuja for Rome, the capital of Italy, to participate in the Akaba process heads of state and government level meeting. Mr. Bayo Onanuga, the special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, in a statement today says the meeting, with special focus on the security crisis in West Africa, will begin on the 14th of October. According to the statement, the meeting will bring together heads of state and government, senior intelligence and military officials from African countries, and representatives of intergovernment and non-governmental organizations to discuss security challenges in West Africa. Let's tell you, of course, reactions have been trailing the decision of the federal government based on the Committee on Clemency for the president to grant clemency to 175 convicts and former convicts, including notable figures such as the late Major General Mahman Vatsa, Major Akubo, Professor Magaji Garaba, Mariam Sanda, Ken Saruriwa, and Honorable Farouk, former member of the House of Reps, and other members of the Ogoni 8. According to a statement by the presidency, it says that the gesture was made on the recommendation of the Presidential Advisory Committee on the Prerogative of Mercy, chaired by the Attorney General of the Federation and the Ministry of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi. The committee says the convicts were considered for clemency based on factors such as remorse, good conduct, old age, and rehabilitation through education or vocational training. Some inmates were recognized for their enrollment in the National Open University of Nigeria, while others are demonstrated notable behavioral reform. We're already getting reactions on the decision of the president for some figures that have been granted this clemency. But let's get the legal standpoint of this decision of the presidency and those who have said what criteria were considered to grant all these persons the clemency. I'm being joined by a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Jibrin Okutepa, who is live for us here in our studio. It's good to see you, Mr. Okutepa. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Shehu, thank you. I don't know why you brought me on Sunday Politics when we are talking legal and you are talking politics.
Yes, but there is politics, legal, and there is an intersection in all of that. When policy decision makers make those decisions, we need to scrutinize them, especially this one now that is relying on law.
Yes.
Give us an understanding. It resides, isn't it, in the constitutional powers of the presidency to give clemency and the executive. What is the position of the law on the issue of prerogative of mercy?
Well, the power of the president to grant mercy or prerogative of mercy or clemency to anyone convicted under the law made by National Assembly is not in doubt. It's encapsulated in Section 175 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. So that provision is very clear. Section 175, subsection 1, gives the president the power to grant the prerogative of mercy to those who have been convicted, and there are various degrees of powers he can exercise after consultations with the National Council of States. And so, from what has been in the news, I think the president may have exercised that power, having regard to the constitutional provisions, and may have set up a committee, usually headed by the Honorable the Attorney General of the Federation. And so I do not think that people are querying the exercise of constitutional power. But I think the concerns of most Nigerians is the categories of persons that this pardon or mercies were extended to. If you look at it, the analysis going on, some covered corruption cases, others talked about drug matters, and even extending to colonial period. About Macaulay, that was said to have been sentenced as far back as 1913. But speaking as a lawyer, I think the president has the power. But as to whether or not the president has the power to grant pardon to somebody whose appeal is still pending is an issue that agitated my mind. And I think that, in my view, with profound respect, that if there is anyone whose appeal was still pending at the material time of this exercise of constitutional power, it may, in my view, amount to a direct interference with the power of the court. For instance, if anyone has his appeal pending in the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court has the power to decide either to affirm or to set aside the judgments of the two courts below. So in my view, therefore, it will be premature, hasty to engage in exercise of prerogative of mercy to such a person whose appeal is pending. But by and large, my answer is that the president has the power to do what he did.
Okay, so my next question would then be, are there limitations to the powers of the president in granting clemency?
I think the only limitations are the complaints of the president's employers, and the employers of the presidents are Nigerian people. If he wrongly exercised that power, we either can punish him at the time of election or criticize him that he has wrongly exercised that power. Or the National Assembly may also, if we have one that is exercising power of checks and balances in a manner that is not rooted in partisan consideration, can also say, Mr. President, you have abused this power, and so we are going to punish you. But other than that, I do not think that any court of law has the power to question the power of the president. Because in my view, the exercise of prerogative of mercy is one aspect of supervisory power over the court decision.
So a court might sentence someone even to death, and I was going to come to that question. On one hand, it does look like the president seems to have an almighty power to grant clemency. He just needs the advice of the Council of State for it to go through. And maybe recommendation and advice from the committee, like the committee that was set up, led by the Attorney General of the Federation. It does look to me that that is I call it an almighty power. The court may have sentenced you to death, but the president,
of course, the president,
or the governor,
the governor, Section 175 and Section 212 of the Constitution gives both the president and the governor the power. If you are sentenced to death, the president can stop. Mark you, if you are sentenced to death, before you can be executed, the warrant for execution must be signed by the governor or the president, as the case may be. So, in my view, the president can refuse to exercise the power of even signing the warrant of execution and say, look, after having met all constitutional requirements, say, look, I'm commuting the death sentence to life, to a certain number of years, or completely, you are pardoned, go home and see no more. And so it wipes away all the efforts of the states in assembly witnesses and prosecution. The resources have been wasted. The courts who sat under very excruciating circumstances that painstakingly considered this matter had their jobs rubbished. That's why, in my view,
and the pain to also the injury to
the victims of the crime, of the offense may not even be compensated. That's how almighty
the power is.
The power of the president and the governor as far as prerogative of mercy is concerned. That is why it should not be whimsically exercised. it should not be exercised with political consideration. Mark you, it can make or man a president in a democratic society where sovereignty belongs to the people. And I say so because our political leaders need to be very careful and be sensitive to the yearning and aspiration of Nigerian people. For instance, when a person who is well known to have been involved in kidnapping, who have been well known to be involved in corruption, have been well known to be involved in murder, is simply let off the hook, wrong message may be sent that it pays to engage in such a conduct so long as you are well connected. People are asking questions. Are these people that prerogative of mercies has been extended to the only Nigerians that deserve such mercy? Are they the only one have shown remorse? Are there no other Nigerians in prison that have learned and passed and are showing more remorse and require? So some Nigerians are looking at this, some of these things from point of view that the president may have been influenced by partisan consideration. I am not in a position to judge that, but I am in a position to say, one, he has a constitutional right to do what he did. As to whether what he did is right or wrong, I'm leaving it
to morality. It's a moral judgment.
No, I'm leaving it, one, for morality, two, to his employers, that includes you and I, to decide if he decides to run again, and to see whether he's the president that will vote, that will continue to let off the hook, even in the face of Section 15 of the Constitution, that it is the duties and responsibility of Nigerian government to eradicate corruption. If EFCC, for instance, ICPC, and even the National Drug Law Enforcement Agencies have painstakingly engaged in prosecutorial adventures that results in conviction, and not too long, the people that ought to be somewhere in Kurikiri prison, Kuje prison, or even Okene prison, or in Ida prison, have been left off the hook. Nigeria may well decide, is he the president that we should entrust further power to?
So
that's the question.
Yeah. Let me quickly jump in, sir. So there are no categories of offense that the president cannot. It's in all categories.
No, he cannot, for instance, exercise prerogative of mercy in favor of a person convicted under state law.
Okay.
His power is limited
under federal laws.
Under federal law, including armed forces laws, because those are laws made by the National Assembly. The prerogative of mercy should be in respect of laws made by National Assembly.
So the governor too cannot exercise prerogative of mercy on federal offenses.
No.
Only on offenses committed within the jurisdiction
of the State Assembly.
Let me quickly take your views on this. People like Atiku Abubakar they're already expressing their views about the president's decision, which he considers it as worrisome. He says, out of the number of people the president had granted clemency, 29.2% of them are pardoned, convicted drug-related crimes. And he's saying that, look, there are those who committed drug trafficking offenses, kidnapping offenses, murder, corruption, that if all of these people are granted clemency, it diminishes the sanctity of justice in our nation. What do you make of Atiku's standpoint?
That is his view. And in the beginning of this program, I said, as to whether or not Nigerians are unanimous on the same page with Mr. President is an issue that I cannot sit here to say Mr. President will get unanimity of Nigerians' approval. Because speaking for myself without holding brief for anyone, before you exercise the prerogative of mercy, you must weigh so many things. For instance, how will the exercise of this prerogative of mercies in respect of some of these people weigh on the morale of our security agencies that may want to go after drug barons? How will it weigh on the morale of lawyers that risk their life to prosecute these people? Mark you, to prosecute people who are engaging in this type of conduct in Nigeria is a risky venture.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about the judicial officers that have spent precious time to convict these people? So, Atiku has his view. I'm not holding brief for him. He may be right, he may be wrong, but my view is Mr. President need to listen to the views of Nigeria. People are worried that some of the power he had exercised appears to be too hasty, too discouraging, so to speak, and so he needs to listen.
Pardoning about Macaulay, to what effect would that be?
I do not know. That's why I said, was the law under which Alberto Macaulay convicted
by the colonial master,
an act of National Assembly? 1913. I'm not too sure Mr. President was born then.
I'm not sure either.
So, who made that law? Was it the National Assembly?
What about the Ogoni? Those Ogoni persons that were given
They were convicted under military decrees.
Yeah.
And one can say under our law that military decrees upon coming to being of the 1999 Constitution, if reenacted, are deemed to be an act of National Assembly. I have no problem with that. But I have my worry as to whether the pardoning of Herbert Macaulay for an offense that was said to have been committed. In fact, I just got to know about that because I only know that Herbert Macaulay was a nationalist, and his images are all over, even on our currency.
There is also VATSA.
Of course, General Vasa, you all know the story. I'm not saying that all the decision on all, speaking as a Nigerian voter, were wrong. But there are some, I don't want to point them out, that ought not to have at this stage. For instance, when we are thinking about fighting corruption, when the security situation,
the optics are not good
of Nigeria as of today, you cannot freely move around. What is the basis of pardoning a kidnapper?
A convicted kidnapper. Or thief. A convicted thief.
A convicted treasury looters.
Or drug
baron.
Or someone who killed a spouse.
That is, again, I ask, is the appeal still not pending in the Supreme Court? So, let's leave this.
All right. Let's move to another issue. Of course, now, from political science professors now, we have now come to law professors that have now been nominated to lead INEC. And this time around, it is falling on a Kogi man for the very first time. And that's Professor Josh Amupitan. Let me ask you, I see that you're smiling.
Why did you have to say Kogi man?
Yes, because
because I'm from Kogi?
Because on two different grounds you belong to. You're from Kogi too. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. He's a lawyer. So you have a lot of similarities, and it's perhaps coming to you as a good decision, isn't it?
Well, for me, the appointment of Professor Joash Ojo Amupitan is the best that the president has ever made, in my view.
Why is it so?
Good. Professor Joas Ojo Amupitan is a professor of law of international credit and repute, a professor of corporate governance, a professor of evidence, a professor that is not only a classroom professor, but a professor that has also practiced law with considerable integrity, credibility, and a man that is known to be a detribalized and non-partisan professor of law. And so I wondered how he was considered, because given the persons that I know of him, he was not in the radar of any political party, so to speak. And so it came to me first as a surprise. Second, is it that the president want to now score a credible points in democratic journey? And so I'm happy.
You think that Professor Amupitan is a good candidate, but are those who have picked holes in the president's decision? For example, there are those who have linked Professor Amupitan's practice to defending cases linked to President Bola Tinubu before he came into office.
Those are people with profound respect have exhibited what I call gross ignorance of information, of facts, and of truth. Because Professor Joas Amupitan had never and was never a lawyer to President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. At least I have the privilege to know it. Why? Because I was a lawyer, or in the legal team of His Excellency Peter Obi, and we stood before the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, and I was consistently appearing in that court. Perhaps people are mistaking Professor Joas Amupitan to Professor Taiwo Osipitan, SAN. They are two different professors of impeccable character. So Professor Amupitan was never on the legal team of Mr. President.
So now, for those who know that, of course, when you see
before we go into all this,
just a moment, sir. If you look at the court papers, you of course know, for those who are following, but there are cases before now that Professor Amupitan has been linked to, being as a counsel to those cases that are linked to Bola Tinubu.
Which case? Because, you see, the Nigerian Constitution did not even specify your qualification to be INEC chairman. There are only 3 qualifications. 1, you must be 40 years, not below 40 years. 2, you must be a non-partisan person. And then 3, a man or a woman of impeccable integrity. Has any of the persons that have chosen to play to public gallery simply because of whatever they consider to be their... I'm not a fan of Mr. President. I'm not his spokesperson. There are some things that the president does that I don't like. But it is you do not just for the purposes of criticizing, and I am not saying because Professor Amupitan is from Kogi. If Professor Amupitan had a baggage, I would say he's not qualified, and heaven will not fall. But given Professor Amupitan that I know, first, Professor Amupitan became a lawyer in 1988, before I became a lawyer. 2, he went to the university I went, University of Jos. He had been Dean of Law. He had been Deputy Vice Chancellor of the university. He has held other managerial positions. And I ask anyone making this allegation or alleging all of these things to point at one instance of a dent on the integrity of Professor Joas Amupitan? If they have, let them show. But to engage, in fact, the one ridiculous one that I read is that he's even having what they call certificate, questionable certificate credential. That law is 5 years. How did he come about his becoming a lawyer within 3 years? That person exhibited gross ignorance of historical facts. Because yours sincerely sitting here, so spent 3 years in the university, and I got my LLB. I went to University of Jos in 1987. I graduated in 1990. Went to law school, became a lawyer in 1991. Because at that material time, law, there's what we call direct entry and
jam admission.
Jam admission and direct entry. Direct entry, you go for 200 level. And then some people come for 100 level. Those who come for 100 level spend 4 years. I went, after finishing my IGMB, I got admission to read law, and I went to 200 level, 300 level, 400 level. I graduated. And today, it will be without sounding modest, no one can say Professor Amupitan or myself or other who didn't even go to university in those days are not good lawyers.
But so, in summary, this decision, out of any other decision, is a fantastic decision from President Tinubu.
Given the accumulative knowledge of Professor Amupitan, 1, in evidence, 2, in electoral jurisprudence, 3, in administrative capacities, being in the university center for years, from 1989 till date, and if you look at his CV, it will give you an understanding of that, who that professor of law is. So my view is, let us not, because I don't like Sheung, they hate channel television. No. There are certain things that channel television may do that is right, but because I don't like Sheung does not mean that whatever channel television does is wrong. So my view is, the only thing I know that we should now do for Professor Joas Amupitan is for him not to allow himself to be changed. Let him remain who he is. Let him go and change the electoral fortunes of Nigeria. Let Nigerian votes count. I have been an advocate of democratic development. What we witnessed before his appointment is nothing but a serious democratic aberration. Votes were not counting. We must rediscover ourselves. And that is why I think that as a professor who had himself appeared in court, handled matters for people, who knows the kind of electoral rascality and political shenanigans of Nigerian politicians, I will advise him, 1, not to defile himself with the king's meat.
Thank you so much.
He must know that everything had been handed over to him except corruption. And so the destiny of Nigeria, of democratic journey, for us to now ensure that vote counts, had been handed over to him by Mr. President as a test. And so he must escape from the Potiphar's wife if there is an attempt to corrupt his impeccable character. And that is what Nigeria needs to do, and encourage him. And when he gets to the office, he should be only a friend of Nigerian Constitution.
Thank you so much. Let us take Mr. Jibrin Okutepa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thanks so much indeed. It's a pleasure having you. Thanks so much indeed.
Good to have you too. And you dragged me here when You are saying that I'm from Kogi. Why didn't you say that before? I hope you are not part of the people.
It's coincidence, though. Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate it.
Thank you.